All right, A to Z Sports, Sam Phalen and Buck Reising here at Nissan Stadium. The Titans just won their preseason opener by a score of 17-13 over the San Francisco 49ers. We're here for a quick recap, thoughts on Will Levis and the first-team offense, who else stood out for the Titans. We're going to go over all of it for you real quick here on a Saturday evening. But first, want to tell everybody out there about our friends at Smoky Mountain Tops. If you're thinking about updating your kitchen or bath countertops, call the pros at Smoky Mountain Tops. They're family-owned and operated for 30 years, and Smoky Mountain Tops has installed over 100,000 projects. You've seen their work at Bridgestone Arena, Nissan Stadium. Smoky Mountain Tops would love the opportunity to earn your business. So if you need countertops, go visit Smoky Mountain Tops, schedule an appointment, and see their beautiful handstone quartz countertops at 615-922-6539. Tell them you heard about them here on A to Z Sports.
It's crazy how you did all that from memory.
Yeah, right. Buck, Titans win tonight 17-13. I think all Titans fans out there were excited to see how Will Levis and this first-team offense were going to look. 14 plays for the Titans' first-team offense, 14 points. How did you feel like this first unit looked on offense here?
Well, I think the return game did them a great service in both the punt and kick returning situations. Obviously, Kearis Jackson breaking it open early with the 63-yard return in the new look format. But, they executed well enough. And frankly, the biggest thing that we were looking for, at least the biggest thing that I was looking for tonight, is how he operated in particular and how they held up around him in pass protection. Faced a couple of critical third downs early on where he was able to complete passes in situations that otherwise last year, Sammy, would have been sacked. To be just completely honest with you, with the upgrades that they've made around him, not only did Will Levis play the first-team offense in its entirety, save DeAndre Hopkins, who's obviously missing with a knee sprain right now. I thought that on the whole, the product went as expected, right? They weren't going to show us anything crazy in the preseason. You're not going to see a bunch of motions or pre-snap shifts and adjustments and things like that. They're just kind of keeping it vanilla, but they were able to get things done in the passing game in particular, and they're pretty efficient in the run game as well. And, I know the right side didn't look perfect all night, but there were some points to kind of build upon there that I think with Nick Petit-Frere back in the mix and them trying to figure out the right guard situation. Certainly Tony Pollard looked good.
Yeah, one note that I took away, Buck, as well, that Brian Callahan pointed out to us just a few moments ago when he was speaking to the media, no penalties for the Titans in the first half as well. Certainly a good sign that this team is at least playing clean football. Yep. That's that type of operational stuff that you talk about that you want to see out of your team in the preseason. One other note for me about this starting offensive group, I love Calvin Ridley, and every time I watch Calvin Ridley play football, he shows me something else that surprises me. And one thing I think Titans fans could get really excited about from tonight's game was the one pass Calvin Ridley did catch. It was a 7-yard pass from Will Levis that he just kind of threw underneath on a 3rd down and 10. Yep. And Calvin Ridley makes a play after the catch, bounces outside, takes it for 20+. I don't feel like that's a weapon Will Levis had in the Titans offense last year. That's certainly not DeAndre Hopkins' game. And so Ridley, that was a taste of kind of the explosive flair that he can bring to this offense to make Will Levis's job a lot easier as a quarterback.
Yeah, 22 yards to be specific. He's very creative with the ball in his hands, which is exactly what you bring him here for, on top of everything that he can do as an elite wide receiver. And, maybe you don't mention, maybe you get 10 or 15 wide receivers in before you mention Calvin Ridley league-wide, right? He's not going to be considered one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, but he sure is hell one of the best wide receivers, if not the best wide receiver on this football team right now, especially in the absence of DeAndre Hopkins. And that's what he needs, right? He needs multiple options, he being Will Levis. He needs multiple options that he can trust, that he knows are going to be able to make plays with the ball in their hands beyond what he's going to be able to do within the scheme of the offense. And that's what this offense is supposed to do. Not only is it supposed to make the answers to the test easy for the quarterback, it's also supposed to create these windows for the quarterback and the wide receiver to be able to operate in, for them to find speed in space and things like that. And that's exactly what Calvin Ridley is. I mean, we talked to Brian Callahan about this at some point this week, and also a little bit tonight, the idea of Levis has never played with a wide receiver anything like Calvin Ridley. There's not a lot of wide receivers anywhere like Calvin Ridley. So this is something that you continue to see dividends from. And, without DeAndre Hopkins on the field, I think it's kind of expedited the process for them to grow and learn together, because he knows Hop. He's worked with Hop. he can't go and lean on Hop right now with him being out of the lineup for the next 4 to 6 weeks.
Absolutely. Two guys I would be remiss if we didn't mention here on our post-game recap are the Jacksons, Jaquan Jackson, Kearis Jackson, and what they did, as you mentioned earlier, in the return game on special teams. Kearis Jackson had a 60-plus yard kick return touchdown. Not touchdown. Excuse me there. 60-plus yard
check
kick.
my notes.
I don't think you do return a kick 60 yards for a touchdown.
Not
But Kearis Jackson did flash in the first iteration of this new kickoff rule we've seen here at Nissan Stadium. And when you start to look at the back end of this wide receiver room and who's potentially that wide receiver 5 or 6 or getting onto this 53-man roster, it's these two guys who are now flashing on special teams that I think probably have the leg up. Would you agree with that assessment at this point?
Well, it's going to help them, right? Kearis Jackson is buried on the depth chart for the wide receivers, and he's not had a good camp relative to the other depth wide receivers, right, that we're talking about, whether it's Mason Kinsey or Kyle Phillips or even Bryce Oliver's out here making plays.
Those three guys, Jaquan Jackson, Kyle Phillips, Mason Kinsey, I feel have all been on a relatively even field in terms of what we've seen at training camp and in practices and their production, right? And so, you start to ask which one of them is going to set themselves apart in special teams, potentially, or in that roster spot. Kearis Jackson maybe not getting it done as a receiver in camp, but the kick return aspect of this whole thing makes it a more interesting conversation.
No, it's a legitimate offensive play, and that's what they're going to be able to do, right? You flip the field in that kind of a situation, you're making life infinitely easier on your offense. It's a legitimate offensive football play now, and so they have to find different kinds of players who are going to help them with that. You'll see a lot of running backs, I think, leave wide this year participating in kick returns. Tajay Spears is supposed to be the starting kick returner for this team. Obviously, preseason, a little different. But Kearis Jackson, and in particular, we brought up Hopkins, but Hopkins may not be ready by the regular season. So it's an initial 53-man roster. It's not a final 53-man roster. So if he can make the initial cut and try and carve things out through the special teams roles, then that is going to be to his benefit right now. While there are reps going around for the wide receivers at large, you can still make some hay on special teams.
Defensively, there was a big chunk of guys of the starting defense that didn't play today. No L'Jarius Sneed, no Chidobe Awuzie, no Jeffrey Simmons or Harold Landry. You were missing a chunk of your defense. Opportunities for some other guys to step up. One guy that certainly did is Chance Campbell. Had himself a team-leading 7 tackles today, a nice sack on the quarterback as well, and a big third down spot. Game-sealing interception. Brian Callahan.
Should have batted it down.
Yeah, should have batted it down.
Don't go for the pick. Bat it down.
Brian Callahan talked to Titans media and said Campbell is somebody who did make the most of his opportunities in an inside linebacker room right now, Buck, that I think is wide open. Right, really, after your two starters, Kenneth Murray and Jack Gibbons, I think it's up for grabs between a lot of these linebackers. And as we've seen, Garrett Wallow go down with an injury. JoJo Doman didn't play today with an injury. Cedric Gray didn't play today with an injury. It's kind of a competition for me to see who steps up and takes those last few spots on the roster.
And worth noting that the expectation is for Cedric Gray to be available by the time they play the next preseason game. So, we'll kind of keep our minds open that way. Jack Gibbons, it seems like you guys out there, you specifically in the audience, are very quick to pounce on Jack Gibbons based on your lack of interest in seeing Jack Gibbons be a starting linebacker for your football team. And that's all well and good, but he is clearly and obviously, alongside Kenneth Murray, the leader in the clubhouse, no matter how you feel about it. So let's start there. Chance Campbell has had a good camp and carried it over into a preseason game. That's exactly what they're looking for. And this is a guy and forgive me, he's either a 6th or a 7th round pick out of Ole Miss a couple of years ago.
I believe he's a 6th, yeah.
6th round pick out of Ole Miss. He's lost a lot of time due to injury, right? This was a player who predominantly was going to have to carve out his role on special teams, but did have some defensive ability.
I felt like he was on the Jack Gibbons trajectory before Jack Gibbons went into that trajectory, kind of out of opportunity after Campbell got hurt.
You're doing that with the 2 white linebackers? That's what you're doing there.
No, that's not what I'm doing. I'm doing a guy that, like you said, was having to carve out his role at special teams initially and, had a trajectory to potentially earn more snaps with a weak room at inside linebacker. And Gibbons kind of took that spot and is now, like you said, the clubhouse leader to start. Campbell trying to fight for one of those depth positions right now. And
what is it with you all and Otis Reese, by the way? You're going to have to explain this Otis Reese thing. to me at some point because I didn't get a ton of tweets. You were telling me that you were.
I get a lot of tweets about Otis Reese.
You hate Otis Reese? Is this?
I don't hate Otis Reese.
My thing is
because
you're an Otis Reese hater.
Well, my thing is what you say. It's the reality of the situation that at camp, Otis Reese has been linebacker 5, maybe 6. He has not been one of those primary guys stepping up in this rotation. I think those camp reps and how many reps a guy gets with the defense says a lot about where a coaching staff views him. So I don't necessarily believe Otis Reese right now is on the trajectory to make this 53-man roster.
Right now.
And that can change.
Yep.
Obviously, I thought he actually looked very good today and had himself a nice game. But I think if we're going down this trajectory of Otis Reese inside linebacker 2, people calling for him to be a starter, I've seen a lot of that online. I'm pumping the brakes on that a little bit as we are getting bombed right now.
You better be careful, otherwise we'll put you on a microphone.
Titans GM.
Don't think I won't.
Bombing us here. Buck, do you have anything else for the people before we wrap up?
Nope, just stay tuned to A to Z Sports, 104.5 The Zone. We'll have all your Titans coverage there.
All right, that's it for us here at Nissan Stadium. 1-0 Titans in the preseason 17-13 win. See you guys later.